Hey, what's the deal, man? It's your boy Tag from Pro Wrestling Tag. You know what I'm saying? As of this recording, it is 11:24 a.m., March 1st, 2026. You know what I mean? I originally had a video, uploaded for this topic, but I decided to do this over because there's a lot of things that I want to say, you know what I mean, in regards to the Danhausen shit, right? So, of course, as you guys know, Danhausen made his long-awaited debut last night at Elimination Chamber, right? And, of course, it did not go well according to plan. And we all know why. Danhausen was booed. You know what I mean? He was booed, and, the entrance was cool. You know what I mean? Because the entrance was more like, it was a hybrid of, like, the 1960s Ghoul, like the Ghoul era, with the Master Mash, that shit. And, his gimmick is basically like a throwback to like the Ghoul atmosphere and such, right? Like the B-list movies and such, right? With a mixture of the 1960s Batman and shit, right? Where he said he'll put curses on you and he has bucket of teeth and such, right? He's a gimmick, right? And if the thing is this, right? I think WWE set themselves up for disaster last night because they set themselves up for failure last night because beginning with this whole crate shit, right? You had people thinking that, this was going to be something big. This is going to be Chris Jericho and such. And then the next day we found out that Jericho's contract was still, up with, or he wasn't a fucking free agent, that he was stuck in Guantanamo Bay, right? And every feeling I get, like, he's leaving AEW. We just don't know when. Definitely sometime this year. But, I think, like I said, I think they set themselves up, with egg on their face with Danhausen, right? And so the thing is, right, I'm putting our gloves on because it is cold here. It's about 31 degrees. Yesterday was fucking nice. Now it's like 31 degrees and shit. They say it's going to snow, but we'll see. Here's the thing, with the whole Danhausen thing. Danhausen is not a main roster act. He's not a main roster act. Danhausen, but he's a gimmick. And WWE love their gimmicks. That's basically what they really thrive for. And, Meltzer says something about the debut that I sort of agree with him on, but I don't. He's basically not their own talent, right? They didn't create Danhausen, but he is a gimmick, right? It's not like he's a muscular guy or like he's a guy that, has a name and such, right? He's not a WWE guy, which is true. He's not, but he's a gimmick. You know what I mean? And WWE loves gimmicks. If this was NXT, right, there wouldn't have been a problem. If this was Triple A especially, which I thought he was going to go to, that definitely wouldn't have been a problem because he fits for something like that. The fact that it's the main roster and in Chicago, that's where is a problem. A huge problem. And because he's not a main roster act. He's not a main roster act. I know he's a Cody Rhodes guy. He's a CM Punk guy. And I know The Rock definitely liked him. So, bam. So it was basically assuring that you would see him in WWE eventually. The fear that I have with Danhausen is, and listen, am I disappointed? Yeah, I'm disappointed. I'm very disappointed because, again, he's not a main roster act, and WWE set these things up thinking that it was going to be for Chris Jericho, and I think that's where the problem lies. The thing that I think will hurt Danhausen, in my personal opinion, is he's going to be booed every single time. He's going to be on Raw tomorrow, and so the fans are basically going to take out their frustration on Danhausen, and it's not a fault of his. It's really not his fault. You know what I'm saying? He had nothing to do with that. It's WWE's fault. And more importantly, Triple H, right? And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm starting to second guess Triple H at this point. Because like, yo, like, you know, you're doing all these things for what? For what? You're taking stuff from Vince for what? You know, Danhausen is not a needle mover. He's not. He's not a needle mover. But I do think that this is going to be bad for Danhausen because the fans are going to take their frustrations out on him because of the whole Jericho thing. That's what. Like I said, you know, we knew he was going to debut, but in Chicago, out of all places, Chicago's like, shout to people in Chicago. You know, like I never been out there, but I know people who've been out there. They said that, you know, it's like a laid back New York City, right? It looks a lot like New York. Like if you take the 7 train and take that shit to like Flushing and such, there's definitely reminiscence of Chicago. A lot of reminiscence. But again, going back to what I'm saying, you know, fans could revolt. Fans are going to more than likely use that as a way to, you know, build their frustration out, or, you know, because they was expecting Chris Jericho. So was I. You know, I don't know what the fuck happens from here at this point. I don't. I honestly don't. You know, like I said, the entrance was cool, you know, with the ladies and shit, you know, doing the fucking ghoul dance and everything. Because again, he's a fucking gimmick. He's a gimmick, and WWE loves gimmicks, right? But man, I mean, like, you talk about a massive fail. Like, this was like more than a slap to the face. Like, it was just like, you know, like when Dave Chappelle imitated Rick James and he slapped the shit out of Charlie Murphy. What did the 5 fingers say to the face? Slap type of deal with that impact, right? I don't know, man. Like, this is, you know, we shall see what happens, but I don't think they're going to push him to a point where he's going to be a star. It's just a lot of, and like I said, I'm disappointed. I mean, look, I'm happy the man found work. He did say he wanted to be back on TV and such, but there were better fucking ways of doing that. There were better fucking ways, yo. And if you see I'm outside, I'm actually going to Popeyes to buy some food. There were better ways to do that. NXT was there. Fucking Triple A was there. Especially Triple A. You know? I don't know, man. This is not a good move. This is pretty much not a good fucking move on WWE's part. You know, with Danhausen. I mean, they got merchandise and such. I ain't gonna front. The merchandise and shit was cool. It was cool, but yeah, like this was, I give it about a month before we start seeing him in main event and in comedy acts and shit. Anyway, guys, I'm about to be out. Excuse me. I got a video uploaded for later tonight, so I'm gonna definitely holler at y'all. Peace.